Hi everyone, welcome to the session 3, which is about the knowledge creation. If you remember, we discussed that when we talk about the dynamics of organizational knowledge management processes, we are talking about this dynamic system. And today we want to focus on knowledge creation, which offers the new knowledge into the organizational knowledge base, basically the arrow that increases or adds to the organizational knowledge base. We will talk about different types of knowledge that organizations want to create at different points. The focus of today's introductory video will be on the 4 strategies of creating new knowledge by organizations. And at the end, I will stimulate thinking about some golden rules of knowledge creation. So before we want to talk about how organizations create new knowledge, I think it's important that we make a distinction between different types of knowledge that organizations can create. In the previous sessions, you already learned about a few classifications of knowledge based on individual and collective, or based on tacit and explicit. I would like to offer another taxonomy that is very much discussed in the literature and helps us better distinguish between the different types of knowledge. And I think this distinction is particularly important for the knowledge creation. This distinction is based on a sort of pyramid of knowledge, of organizational knowledge. At top, we are discussing the knowledge that is called know what. Basically, it's all about the description of the ideas, the experiences, the facts, and the things that are actually happening at the time that you are actually working with the facts and the patterns. One example is, for instance, if I ask you what or which programming language is useful for designing certain applications, you may come back and say Java is a very good programming language. So that's a know what. The next actually level is know why, and this is basically related to the explanations, to the mechanisms, to the reasons, to the causes and methods and theories. So if I ask you why you think Java is a good programming language, all the reasons, justifications, and basically arguments that you put forward are related to know why. But at the very base of this pyramid, we get to know how, which is one of the most fundamental types of organizational knowledge, something which is more related to the capabilities of performing certain activities or solving certain issues. It's more about skills, solutions, techniques, procedures, tricks. So these are basically different examples of know-how in the organizations. So at this level, if you bring an expert of Java programming, that person actually offers the know-how of Java programming. I think this distinction is important for knowledge creation, because depending on the type of knowledge that organizations want to create, they may use different strategies, or different methods or techniques can be effective for one type, but it's not effective for the other types. So that was about the introduction of the different types of knowledge that organizations create. Let's get to the second point, which is about how organizations create new knowledge. The general answer to this question is still scholars are not with one answer. So still is a very active line of investigation, because It might appear easy, but in the reality, organizations create knowledge through very different ways. And here I try to actually classify different approaches, different strategies of knowledge creation into 4 strategies. I want to sort of push you to think about a 5th strategy, or maybe strategy number 6. I don't claim that these 4 are comprehensive, but I think they cover most of the ways that organizations create new knowledge and are discussed in the literature. So a quick run through the list. You will get first to the ideation. The idea of ideation is that organizations sometimes start from nothing and create new ideas. Second approach is called improvement. When organizations start from an existing knowledge, so they already have certain perhaps techniques or tools or methods, but then they improve it. The third strategy is actually almost the opposite of the second one. When organizations start from the knowledge that they already have, but instead of building on it, instead of improving that, they try to actually break it. They try to actually go against it and say, so we have been working based on this methodology of software development, for instance. How can we actually hack it? How can we actually break it? What's wrong with that? And therefore we can come up with a new way or a new technique. And then the final approach is called synthesis. When organizations combine different elements, different pieces of the knowledge, and they create a novel combination. None of the elements are new. The way that these elements are put together is novel and new. I don't expand this strategy so much. I quickly run through the next slides and highlight a few points. When you read the different readings for this chapter, you can get a lot of more details and examples through the reading. So here is just the introduction. In terms of the ideation, the suggestion is that best if ideation starts with a problem, something that we don't know, something which is paradoxical. How can we reduce the problems that customers offer or customers complain about? The second point about ideation is people. People are very much at the center of any ideation process. So they need to be motivated, they need to be diverse with diverse backgrounds, and they have to actually actively interact with each other. And place is also another important P next to the other P, problem and people. How closely you put people together, how much they feel safety, and how much the environment creates stimulation for the idea generations. I mean, these are the different aspects of the place. Related to the 3 Ps, there are a few ways that organizations try to actually implement and support the ideation, and basically this is just a list of them. They can set up the R&D teams, they can think about open innovation as a mechanism to stimulate this ideation. They can go with a more crowd-based ways of knowledge or idea creation, and they can go with some sort of competitive environment such as hackathons. Ideation has a few limitations, and I'm sure you already read about this story of how the things that people think at the beginning in terms of the initial ideas can be very different from what will be eventually delivered at the end. And that's basically one of the issues of the ideation, that if you only rely on the ideations, very often ideas can go out of control and they don't connect very much to what people need, what the customers need. Ideation is good, but if you focus too much on the ideation, you may actually reinvent the wheel, because many of the ideas might have been already created before. And ideation is limited because ideation is just the beginning of the knowledge creation process, and still the things that are created through the ideation needs to be integrated to the business, to the products and services. So the second actually strategy tries to counter or actually complete the ideation by focusing on the existing knowledge and see how that existing knowledge can be improved. Of course, this works for the areas of knowledge that are already established or mature in the organization, so organizations already accumulated some knowledge on them. And the good thing with this improvement is that it's very much connected to the daily practices. Imagine that you go to a hospital, they already have some experience about how to take care of emergencies, and now in the situation of, for instance, the coronavirus, they need to improve the admission of the urgent cases. So they build on the protocols that they already have, but try to speed up and improve. So it's very much connected to the daily practices that they have. But improvement is incremental. You very often slightly improve and a little bit adjust what you already have. So thinking about major changes in the knowledge base of the organizations, improvement is limited in that sense. Improvement is very much to the core of a lot of studies that they looked at the Japanese companies. One of the very classic studies that you will need to read is by Nonaka. It's actually very much impossible that you get a course on knowledge management and you don't know this person very well. So I suggest you to look up his biography and check out some of his lectures. It's a nice person to listen to, but at the center of his whole career on knowledge creation and studying the Japanese companies is this figure that Nonaka explains how through the conversion of different knowledge forms to each other, organizations can gradually, step by step, create new knowledge and improve it. So I leave it to you to read this book chapter carefully and get into the details. Of course, ideation has also its own limitations. Sometimes you get stuck in a certain domain. No matter how much you improve on a very obsolete technology, you are stuck in that. And improvement often is left to the people who actually work. So you expect the people who are working in the emergency section of the hospital, they improve their work practices. But they are so busy with just executing the protocols, which may actually prevent them from finding time and resources to actually think about how they can improve what they already have. And because people are focused on the daily work, they may have very narrow focus in terms of the ways that they can improve. And this takes us to the third strategy, which says, well, if you want to start from the existing knowledge, start from that, but instead of trying to just improve it, make it slightly better, go against that. Try to criticize it. Go against the fundamental assumptions of that and see by breaking that, the existing knowledge, can you come up with a whole new knowledge about a certain topic or a certain problem. I think the example that you see in this figure, I'm sure you already heard of this. If not, just check out the link here. You can find the link in the slides that I will upload. How breaking an initial knowledge created for creating some sort of glue led to creating a very important different knowledge for creating some sort of post notes. Breaking basically works especially when organizations already have, again, a sort of established domain of knowledge and they already experienced problems of that. If you have been working with a very old-fashioned product design or simulation software or programming language, and you already know the problems of that technique, of that tool, then you are in a good position to start breaking what you already have. Failures are very critical for the breaking strategy. Almost any example of breaking somehow starts with a kind of failure to stimulate thinking about how we can improve. And something which absolutely organizations need if they want to go through breaking is the psychological safety, an environment in which people can easily dare to make mistakes without the fear of being punished or blamed. And that's one of the key supporting factors. And of course, people need to mindfully learn after the failure. So it's not that we just fail and fail and fail and enjoy just our failures. What's important is that right after the failure, we mindfully engage with the learning and reflect on what we can learn from that failure. Talking about failures, of course, very often they happen unexpectedly. You don't want to actually end up spoiling a new product, but once that happens, then you can actually learn and try to actually create a new knowledge. However, some organizations found ways to create intentional failures, to break certain habits or certain techniques or certain methodologies or routines. And this is already in the literature of studies that they looked at some of these Japanese automotive companies. And the final strategy is basically synthesis. It's a very effective strategy and very often is complementary to the other domains. The idea of the synthesis is this: you have different areas of knowledge that they are combined in a certain way. For instance, you have experts in the graphical design, you have experts in the mechanical engineering, you have experts in the programming. But they have not been connected with each other, or if they are connected, they are connected for producing certain products. You have the same elements, but you recombine them in a new way. And then you create a whole new knowledge out of this creative synthesis. To give you a metaphor, it's like you have the same ingredients of making one type of food, but now by changing the way that you put them together and the way that you actually cook them, it's the same ingredients, but you come up with a whole new type of dish. I do recommend you that you check out this paper that is cited at the end of this slide. It's not obligatory that you read it, but it gives you a lot of interesting examples of how synthesis actually works for the knowledge creation. To the core of this approach, again, it starts with the problem. So synthesis needs to be around a certain problem. You cook ingredients for certain purposes. Diversity of the inputs is important, so better that you start from a situation that you have multiple knowledge domains and potentially from different areas of expertise. And you have to actually creatively select the areas of expertise that are possible to be combined and think about how you can put them together in a new way, how you can actually decompose these elements of knowledge and recompose them, recreate them in a new way. And that's basically to the idea of the creative combination, that you think about the new relations between the elements. To summarize, ideation, improvement, breaking, and synthesis are four main strategies. They are different, but they are not against each other. They can complement each other, and very often organizations, especially the organizations that are very active in creating new knowledge, use a combination of them. However, we need to know when, under which conditions, for which purposes, each mechanism or each strategy is more effective than the others. The last part, as you have seen, there are many suggestions on how organizations can create knowledge. But still, if you ask yourself, are there a few golden rules that organizations can consider for any knowledge creation? I would say, at least in my observations of the literature and different cases, I would say these ones are the minimum that I found almost across all the cases and all the strategies. The problem focus. So knowledge creation does not happen in isolation, does not happen just without any context. Starting from specific, well-defined, challenging problem seems to be a key element of any processes of knowledge creation. Interaction, exchange of the ideas, criticizing each other, giving feedback to each other, talking to each other, brainstorming. These are all the examples that knowledge creation happens when human experts, and these days human experts with non-human intelligent agents, they interact with each other. So having one agent separate from the rest, it's not likely that we can have fruitful knowledge creation processes. And finally, something that is simple but very important is Slack. Not the application that we use to communicate with each other. It means extra resources, time, money, freedom, access to the people, objects, spaces, something that gives us more than what we just need for performing in the organizations. If I need 5 hours to finish the task that I have to do for my day, I cannot be expected to do a lot of knowledge creation. If I have only the time and the resources that are efficient for performing my work, I just perform my work and I try to keep doing whatever I have been doing so far. If I want my employees to go further and create new knowledge, I need to give them extra space, extra time, extra resources. I'm sure you already heard of the 20% rule in Google. If not, check it out. It's a very interesting initiative for that purpose. So I hope you already got a good overview of the knowledge creation. Again, as other sessions, this is just the introductory video. Make sure that you carefully read the readings and participate in the discussions on the Canvas. Have a very nice time.